Some may say I have a bit of a perennial problem, and by some, of course, I mean Stuart, but the reality is when you can plant something that will give you flowers and beauty in your garden for years, decades even, that's just too good to pass up. So right now I'm layering these in week by week into the greenhouse gardens. I find inspiration for these particular perennials in a few books that I want to share with you. The first is Tasha Tudor's Gardens. Now, I only heard of Tasha Tudor a few years ago and have since completely fallen in love with her gardens. They're magical and sweet and cottagey and rustic, but you can tell she puts a ton of time and effort into these gardens. If I could get mine to look half as good, I would be sitting pretty. Tasha Tudor's gardens are really specific about varieties that are planted, and this has got me thinking, do I just plant whatever's available at the nursery, or do I actually seek out specific varieties for particular reasons? So I'm going to do some of both, because the reality is I'm going to go to the nursery and see what I love and see what's beautiful to me. But it also means I'm ordering in a few things, like some special varieties of dahlias and even a few special varieties of hostas. The second book that I've mentioned before is The Layered Garden. Now, this is a book that's 20 years in the making, so I'm not going to get too hard on myself that my gardens don't look like his. But the point is kind of to continue to think about the different layers you're putting in your garden. So this isn't just a plant once and then totally forget about it. This is about layering in so that each season, each week, each month, you have something beautiful to look at in your space, which has made me completely think about my gardens in a different way. This whole concept of the layered garden has really got me thinking about what blooms and when. So last week I got to give you guys a full garden tour, but that's what it looks like now, mid-April, and that's not what it's going to look like at the end of April or the beginning of May. So to kind of help beef out some summer blooms, I ordered in some special dahlia tubers. Now, I've never grown dahlias before, mostly because there's not a lot of varieties I love, and I only love to grow flowers that I really love. But these ones I did fall in love with. They are, what are they? Sugar Daddy, .com, and Ivanetti. Sounds fancy. So these are going to go into some containers, and I'll just place them out into the courtyard for summer blooms, and then we'll have to bring them in the fall because they won't last in our zone. So while the perennials are getting started and getting their root systems established, there's still a lot of other things to do on the farm, like plant pasture. You don't really think of this as a garden per se, but this is what feeds our livestock through the summer months. So we have to make sure that it's in really good condition. So this last week, we disced up our entire old pasture, tilled it, and now we're going to replant it in a pasture mix, including alfalfa, for some additional protein. A few perennials you'll often see in cottage gardens are hydrangeas, of course. These are limelight hydrangeas. These are going into their 3rd year. And peonies. Peonies are that classic, very stately, upscale flower. They always make me feel very fancy. I grow them because I think they smell incredible. But those are coming back now, so that's exciting to see. And then, of course, another cottage favorite, which is lamb's ear. This is one I got familiar with when I was working in the flower shop, and we would weave them into corsages and into bouquets. But now I grow them because I just love the way that they sprawl and their velvety feel. I find it just incredibly charming. My kids love them too. Check out how much this rhubarb has grown in just 2 years. I ran into a friend at supper this week, and she told me she finally learned the trick to growing extremely large rhubarb, and it was to mulch it with about 4 inches of compost in the fall. Well, I did that with this rhubarb without even knowing it. I put it under a huge layer of straw and manure, and then eventually wood chips, and this is what happened this year. So it's time to make some jam, I guess. I would argue that one of the most quintessential cottage flowers is hollyhocks. Now, these were never flowers that I was really fond of until I found this variety. I can't remember the name of it, which I know that's not very helpful, but they're black, and I find them extremely striking and dramatic. Most of the time you see hollyhocks, they're kind of that muted pink or peach or even yellow color, but these ones stole my heart. So I've lined them up right next to the entrance to the kitchen. These are the first flowers that people walk by when they're coming into the house. I think these ones put on a great display. Down in the greenhouse gardens, almost all of the perennials are now in. So we planted these by cutting an X in the weed tarp that we had laid down and putting the plant directly down into the soil. Then we top dressed them with a little bit of mushroom compost and steer manure, and then mulched the entire bed with wood chips. Even though the perennials have kind of stolen the show this week, there's a lot of other stuff going on in the gardens too. We've been hard at work in the greenhouse gardens in getting the last of the spring vegetables planted, like the parsnips and the turnips, and even some cabbage transplants from the actual greenhouse. We've also been working on mulching those pathways. A few of you asked how we were going to handle the ryegrass. Well, we handled it by tilling it in and killing it essentially. Then in between those rows, laying a thick row of cardboard and covering that with an even thicker layer of wood chips. Now this won't stop the weeds completely, but I'm kind of hoping it will at least give us a head start on some of these weeds.